Did you know that the percentage of Americans who are worried about crime is at its highest point in the past 7 years? That's right. Today, 53% of Americans, or over half, say that they worry about crime a great deal, and 27% say that they worry about it a fair amount. According to Gallup, this means that crime is one of the top 14 concerns of Americans, along with other things like homelessness and an increasing cost of living. However, Americans might not be as justified as they think in their concerns regarding crime. FBI data, for instance, shows that both violent and property crime rates in the U.S. have actually dropped significantly since the 1990s. And in the present day, crime is less prevalent than it's ever been in recent history. Now, this of course doesn't mean that there isn't any crime in the US, or that it shouldn't be a concern for Americans. In fact, in many places, crime is still a major issue, and has even been increasing. And so today on Across the Globe, we're going to be looking at the most crime-ridden cities in the US. Number 7. Albuquerque, New Mexico. If you've watched some of our other videos, you're probably aware that Albuquerque has had a tough time as a city in recent years. It not only has struggled with a high poverty rate of 16.2%, but it's one of the few cities in the US that is getting poorer. That's right. Albuquerque has actually seen a negative 16.49% change in its poverty rate between 2011 and 2021, meaning that conditions are getting worse. But it's not just poverty that negatively impacts Albuquerque. As you can imagine, since it's on this list, Albuquerque also struggles with crime. Specifically, the city has a total crime rate of 57.73 per 1,000 people, meaning that it's only safer than 1% of other cities in the US. Most of this number is due to high property crime at a rate of 43.77 per 1,000 residents. However, violent crime is also significantly above the state average, at a rate of 13.96 per 1,000 people. This is nearly double the violent crime rate seen by the state of New Mexico as a whole, which is 7.88 per 1,000 people. And according to Property Club, what all this data boils down to is the fact that Albuquerque is about 171% more dangerous than the national average. Number 6. Detroit, Michigan. As you may know, Detroit has had a long and troubled history with crime. Fortunately, though, much of its crime has gone down in recent decades. In 1987, for instance, the city saw a total of 686 homicides. By 2016, that number had decreased by more than half, down to 302. And even more recently, Detroit saw an 11% decrease in violent crimes between 2021 and 2022, indicating that crime may be on a consistent downward trajectory. At this point, I know what you're thinking. Why is Detroit on this list if it's seen an improvement in its crime? Well, it's here because despite these declines, it still remains one of the most crime-ridden cities in the US and even in the world. In 2018, for instance, Detroit had the 4th highest homicide rate out of any other city in the US. As if that weren't bad enough, it is currently considered the 29th most dangerous city in the world. Much of this is due to high violent crime rates. For example, Visual Capitalist listed Detroit as being the 6th most dangerous city in America according to its number of violent crimes, which is 23 per 1,000 people. This means that if you live here, you have a 1 in 43 chance of being a victim of violent crime, making it not only one of the most dangerous cities in America, but one of the top 2 most dangerous large cities in the US, which applies to cities with populations over 600,000. Now remember, when we're looking at violent crime rates, we're just talking about the most violent forms of crime, and not things like property crime and simple assault. So when we add property crime in, we see that Detroit has a total crime rate of about 59 per 1,000 people. Finally, I'll note that Detroit has one of the highest crime costs per capita in the nation, at $6,780 per person. This includes things like property loss, incarceration expenses, and productivity decreases, among others. For reference, the average cost of crime per capita across the U.S. is about $1,836, and the city in the U.S. with the lowest crime cost per capita, Naperville, Illinois, has a value of only $156. Number 5. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis has played an important role in U.S. history. For starters, it's known as the Gateway to the West, largely because it was the 19th century jumping-off spot for westward exploration and expansion. Since then, it's also developed a notable musical history, having been a key spot for early blues and jazz and spawning several famous musicians. However, St. Louis has also struggled with high crime in recent years and currently has an overall crime rate of 70 per 1,000 people. Breaking that down, St. Louis has a violent crime rate of 14.96 per 1,000 residents and a property crime rate of 55.05 per 1,000. This violent crime rate is notably high, given Missouri's average of 5.35 per 1,000 people. As if that wasn't damaging enough, MoneyGeek named St. Louis the most dangerous city in the U.S. based on its high crime cost per capita, which is a whopping $8,457, the highest in the nation. Number 4. Oakland, California. As I mentioned at the start of this video, many cities have actually seen a decrease in crime in recent years. Unfortunately, that's not been the case for Oakland. In fact, crime is up so much that it has some residents considering moving out of the city for good. Specifically, burglaries in Oakland have increased by 41% and robberies have increased by over 20% in the past year. I will note, some of the most violent forms of crime, like homicides, have decreased 14% year over year. When we look at crime rates per capita, Oakland has a rate of 70.03 per 1,000 people, which breaks down to a violent crime rate of 12.57 per 1,000 residents and property crime rate of 57.46 per 1,000. Ultimately, this translates to a significant per capita crime cost at $5,329, the 11th highest in the country. Number 3. Little Rock, Arkansas. Little Rock, with a population of a little over 200,000, is the capital of Arkansas and the most populated city in the entire state of Arkansas. The city is known for having plenty of family-friendly activities and for being a great spot for history lovers, foodies, and art enthusiasts alike. Despite all this, though, it may not in fact be the best place to raise a family, or for an individual to move to. As you can probably guess, that's due to the high amounts of crime here. According to Visual Capitalist, for instance, Little Rock has a violent crime rate that's within the 10 highest in the nation. Specifically, its violent crime rate is 20.2 per 1,000 residents, and people living here have a 1 in 49 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime. When we look at the city's total crime rate, which also includes property crime, Little Rock has a rate of 73.31 per 1,000 people. Furthermore, MoneyGeek listed Little Rock on their annual list of most dangerous cities in the U.S. based on their crime cost per capita. When it comes to Little Rock, this number is $5,374, or in other words, crime costs each resident $5,374 per year. Number 2. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham has unfortunately been considered one of the least happy cities in the country. Smart Asset, for instance, compared happiness levels of 200 cities across the nation and found that Birmingham ranked the worst according to happiness metrics like life expectancy, percentage of people living in poverty, and personal bankruptcy filings per capita. When we dive even deeper into the details, it becomes apparent pretty quickly that these numbers aren't great. The poverty rate in Birmingham, for instance, is 25.5%, compared to the national average of 11.6%. While financial hardships can certainly lead to feelings of unhappiness, the presence of crime can as well. And unfortunately for Birmingham, they've seen a lot of crime in recent years. For starters, Birmingham's violent crime rate is 20.6 per 1,000 people. This means that people here have a 1 in 49 chance of being a victim of a violent crime. When we look at both violent crime and property crimes, Birmingham has a crime rate of 77 crimes per 1,000 people, with property crime being at 56.52 per 1,000 people. For context, Alabama's crime rate as a whole is 31.82 per 1,000 people. And when it comes to the crime cost per capita, Birmingham ranked second worst in the country at $7,900 per person. If your head is spinning with all these numbers, let me make it simple. According to Neighborhood Scout, this all means that Birmingham is safer than only 1% of U.S. neighborhoods. Number 1. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis has historically been known as the home of the blues and the birthplace of rock and roll. It's home to Graceland, the historic Beale Street, and has been mentioned in more songs than any other city in the entire world. However, Memphis isn't just known for its musical history. It's also been more recently known as one of the most dangerous cities in America and, along with Detroit, is also one of the most dangerous large cities in the U.S., which, again, applies to those with populations over 600,000. Specifically, Memphis has a violent crime rate of 25.1 per 1,000 residents, meaning that you have a 1 in 39 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. Compare that to the violent crime rate in the entire state of Tennessee, which is about 25% of that at 6.75 per 1,000 people, and it becomes clear how much of an outlier Memphis is. Additionally, when we look at the total crime rate, that number jumps even higher, all the way to 80.5 per 1,000 residents, which is the highest on our list and makes Memphis the most crime-ridden city in the U.S. And as for crime cost per capita, MoneyGeek put it at $7,184, the fourth highest in the U.S. What about the most corrupt cities in the U.S.? Watch this video to learn about that.